Strap yourselves in, folks. This is going to be a rough one. Welcome to yet another video and yet another epic rant on what is now the worst piece of fucking trash I've had the displeasure of sitting through. August Underground Mordum. And I know some of you are probably wondering, why did you watch this movie? You didn't like the first one. Yeah, I hated the first one. Until I saw August Underground Mordum, that was the worst film that I'd ever seen. And yeah, you're right. I did not like the first film. It wasn't my cup of tea, to put it lightly. But I had a longtime friend of mine and subscriber, and he really wanted to hear my thoughts on this. So here we are. I don't like these fucking movies. It's not just because of the subject matter. That's one thing, because I think it's absolutely fucking disgusting and deplorable. And I do not understand the appeal or even the reason for these films to exist. Because yes, society is fucked up and some people do go this far, but I don't think there's anything to gain by putting a spotlight on those fucking animals and the atrocities that they commit. But it's not just that. It's because of the very structure of these kind of movies. To me, a simulated snuff film is fucking pointless. What is the point to this? Especially if you don't even simulate it effectively. August Underground, at times, had some moments where maybe you could think it's real, but if you knew what you were looking for, you could tell it was fake. But what really brought that film down was the acting and how awful it was. And the same thing occurs with this movie, but this time with even more atrocious acting and awful actors. I don't understand the approach that Fred Vogel and company decide to make with these movies. Okay, I get it. You're trying to be authentic with the camcorder footage and the grainy, fuzzy camera work and the shaky cam and all this other shit. All right? I get it. You're trying to make these a bunch of random spliced murder tapes. Okay, all right. If you're doing that, wouldn't you want to draw the audience in? Wouldn't you want to make the audience think and feel that what they're watching is real? You would think that, wouldn't you? But no, instead the approach that Vogel makes with these movies is let's have a bunch of people who are shitty actors deliver shitty acting performances that aren't believable, aren't authentic, and then try to cover them up and say that they're acceptable because they're supposed to be bad. They take you out of the film. They ruin whatever immersion you're trying to achieve. And this film is a prime example of that. From the first sequence, there's a guy who's just giggling and playing around and not taking things seriously. He's supposedly getting fucked in the ass, and his acting is miserable. It's pathetic. It's laughable. I was laughing at the opening of this movie. I don't think that's what they want. I don't think that's what Vogel wants from the most intense, disturbing film ever made. Is for me to laugh my ass off at the shitty acting the moment it starts playing. And I know some people are like, well, it's supposed to be that way because it makes it more authentic. Does it? Does it really? Because to me, the actors are so bad and they're trying so hard to be edgy and hardcore and crazy that none of it works. It comes across as if it's a massive fucking joke. And not the one that I think they were trying to intend, like, oh, they're crazy people and they do these sick, fucked up things, but they are also a bunch of silly dumbasses. And it's like, okay, all right, but the way that it's written and the way that these characters portray these roles, it's so try hard that it's terrible. And it ruins whatever authenticity that the film is trying to provide to the audience. You're trying to make a simulated snuff film, and you can't do that right because you never buy the simulation. So Fred Vogel returns to direct, and Wikipedia lists the rest of the cast as directors as well. So maybe I'll say this film was directed by Fred Vogel and pals. And the direction is every bit as incompetent, every bit as amateur, every bit as atrocious as the direction in August Underground. And I'm sorry, if you have to have a built-in out for your shitty direction, then you're a shitty director and you're a shitty filmmaker. If you were any good, you wouldn't have to have built-in outs for your shitty filmmaking. Oh, it's supposed to be bad. The direction is supposed to be terrible. The production values are supposed to be super cheap and bottom of the barrel. It's supposed to look fuzzy and grainy. It's supposed to have shaky cam. The acting is supposed to be bad. If you have to have all of these supposed to be's when it comes to your direction and your talent, then you're not that talented. Just because Fred Vogel was the first guy to come up with the idea of making some simulated, shitty, shot on video, fake snuff film with practical effects and shitty acting, that doesn't mean that he's some kind of legendary auteur. It doesn't mean that he's a great filmmaker like Frank Henenlotter or a whole slew of other filmmakers. It doesn't really take that much talent to create something that's deliberately bad. I'll give Fred this. He started the wave, and he gets credit for that because he saw that there was an audience that was into this stuff, and no one was really providing the mix of content that he was bringing to people. And the saying is that there's a profit and there is a market for anything, and these films are definitely a good example of that. But that doesn't mean that he's a good filmmaker. I've seen other films, clips from other movies that he did, and they suck just as much, but this time around, there is no built-in out. The direction is just flat and lifeless and nothing special. And before anybody says, oh, well, you haven't made any movies. Actually, I have. I've made student films for college, and they sucked. And I suck as a filmmaker. And I'm not trying to say that I'm a good director because I directed some films that were supposed to be low budget, that are supposed to be crappy in terms of their quality. And the thing is, Fred Vogel, at this point in time in his career, you would think he would show some progress as a filmmaker. Okay, the first film was an experimental thing. All right, we'll see what you got. No, he remains stagnant and delivers the same shitty quality when it comes to his directing. And then you have the writing by Fred Vogel and pals, if you even want to call it that, because this film just exists as a cash grab. 100%. August Underground was a surprise success for Fred Vogel and his company, Toe Tag Pictures, or Toe Tag Films. So all right, we have an audience now. They like this stuff. Let's go all out with the sequel. Let's do everything. Let's cross every line. And that's what they did. And didn't even bother to write a plot, didn't even bother to have characterization or depth for these characters, except for the bare minimum. They just made these films as demo reels for gore and just spliced in bad acting with no plot and called it a day. It doesn't take that much effort or talent to put something like that together. It's not that special. Just because you cross those lines that a lot of people weren't willing to cross for good reason, because they have integrity and they're not willing to have sequences like the ones that are in this movie because of how repugnant and reprehensible they are, that doesn't mean that you're so visionary, that you're so imaginative, just because you were willing to sink that low. So instead of having two giggle twats and giggle fucks to deal with in the story, now we have more than two. Now we have four. So double the giggle twats and giggle fucks. Yay! So fucking sweet. I love it. Double the annoying. Double the irritating. So, and it's one of those things where, okay, you would think if the story is going to have more characters, that would mean that there would be more dynamic with these characters, that they would stand out from one another better. But no, they're just all varying degrees of annoying, crazy, and loud. That's it. The main differences are there's one that's a chick. There's another one that's played by Fred Vogel that's yet again a fat fuck who's trying to be super aggressive and tough, and it's not believable in the slightest. And another one who's just an annoying man-child. And then another guy who's just there. I don't even remember what the fuck his personality was, or even what his character was. Really, it's the main three that this film focuses on for the most part. If you even want to call it a film. Because like I said, it's barely even a fucking movie. It's another reason why this is the worst film that I've seen. Because I can't even really call it a film. It's just a series of demented gore effects and bad acting. And the film, I guess it tries to have some kind of story with Maggot and Cristie and this whole dynamic between the two, but it's not very effective and it's not very well written or put together. And then you have this thing near the end where it seems like the crew of killers is disgusted or tired of Maggot taking things to the extreme. Like even they are like dude, like you're too much. But that is very weak and substandard when it comes to how that is handled as well. And then you have the acting. Oh my god. The acting is probably one of the worst things about the movie other than the camera work. Which that's really the thing that made me nauseous the most, was the fucking camera work. How much shaky cam was going on, and how it seemed like Fred Vogel just put the camera in the middle of the fucking ocean and called it a day. But other than the really irritating and hard to watch camera work, the camera weaving and bobbing all over the place, you have the atrocious acting. With all of these actors just trying way too fucking hard to be edgy, hardcore, and psycho. And none of these performances are authentic. None of these performances are believable. And as a result, This simulation of a snuff film, of a murder tape, just comes across as a bunch of friends just fucking around with a camera. And I guess maybe that's what they were trying to go for, a bunch of crazy friends fucking around with a camera. But here's the difference. The only thing that I bought was the crazy friends fucking around with a camera. I didn't buy the actual kills. I didn't buy the actual intent. I didn't buy any of it, despite how legitimately impressive some of the practical effects were for a really low budget. If I were to give this film any positives or any praise, it would be to the effects artists. $300 did a pretty impressive job with the practical effects. And there's quite a few of them in the film. That being said, they don't really carry the same weight as they would have if the acting was better. And I'm not asking for people who, oh, you can tell that they're acting, because that's what I already get with this movie. You can tell that they're acting. They're not natural. It doesn't come across as the day in a life of a bunch of psycho crazy killers. It doesn't come across like that at all. It just comes across as a bunch of Vogel's friends fucking around. And I don't think that really helps the film in the long run. I mean, you have scenes in this movie that completely kill whatever tone it's trying to have. If it's trying to be intense and really fucked up and hard to shake, why do you have scenes where a guy gives another guy a cheese dog blowjob? And I'm not making that up either. That happens. There's a scene where a guy takes a cheese dog, puts it in his pants, and then has another guy suck the cheese dog until the cheese sprays out of the hot dog all over this guy's face like it's a cheese dog bukkake. And this is in a film that's supposed to be the most disturbing, intense horror film ever made. And it's got a cheese dog blowjob scene in it. Maybe it's an attempt to be funny, but I just thought it was stupid, and I laughed because of how dumb it was and how out of place that scene was. Maybe it's because I saw the director's cut. Maybe it's not in the other version. But if it is, that's the thing I remember even more than the gore and the really fucked up acts of violence or rape or so on. It's the cheese dog blowjob scene. And yeah, there's a lot of fucked up shit in this movie. If the only thing you want out of a film like this is just to see a lot of fucked up shit, this film's for you. But if you want any substance, you want anything that will really stick with you on a deeper level, that will actually scare you, you're not going to get any of that with this movie. More than likely, you're just going to be bored out of your fucking mind because there's no reason to give a fuck about anybody. There's no reason to care about what happens. There's no reason to give a shit about any of the victims because you don't know anything about them. There's no reason to care about the drama that's going on between some of these characters because they're not likable. And it's not one of those films where there's enough going on that it maintains your interest consistently. After a while, the gore just gets tedious and you're just like, okay, all right, more gore, more intense horror, another box checked off on the extreme horror checklist. You got anything else for me? You got any twists? You got anything? Do you have any spice? Why are you just giving me the same fucking white bread bullshit? Even though it's supposed to be this really edgy, daring film, after a while, once you really start to realize what its formula is, it's even predictable. You're like, okay, it's going to go there. There's never a moment where if something pops in your head, you're like, they're not going to do that, are they? You're like, yeah, of course they're going to do that. And then it loses its impact in that regard as well. And the thing is, there are some ideas with this movie that have some potential, like the stuff where they go visit a serial killer's house and they check out his house of horrors. It's like a sick, twisted, demented, haunted house with them with their camcorders going around looking at the serial killers, trophies, and all this other kind of shit. Why not have the serial killer actually show up? And now the movie becomes a stalk and slash film where all of these sick fucks are now being stalked by another sick fuck. And then the movie ends with them being killed by the serial killer. And then that's what leaves you thinking. Because you aren't even left thinking by the end of the movie. You're just like, that was fucking gross. That was disgusting. I hated every minute of it. It was obnoxious. It was annoying and pointless. But if you had a moment where it's like, oh, here comes a serial killer, then he kills them one by one in various gory ways, and then you realize, oh shit, I literally just rooted for a serial killer, and yeah, he did kill these other killers, but is he really any better? Is he better than them because he took them off the face of this earth, or is he just as bad? It leaves you with something other than nothing. Because I'm sorry, like, this did not have long lasting feelings of disgust for me. It didn't leave that much of an impression. I forgot about the majority of the movie already, despite its intense subject matter, because there's nothing to this film. There's no good performances by Fred Vogel, Cristie Whiles, Michael Todd Schneider. I mean, Fred Vogel, once again, he's just as shitty of an actor as he is a director and a writer. I don't know what his thing is by trying to play these wannabe tough guy roles. It doesn't work, man. You come across as a fucking gym teacher. Actually, scratch that. Gym teachers are more intimidating. You have Cristie Whiles as Krusty, trying just way too fucking hard, overcompensating to the millionth degree, to be quirky, to be crazy, to be an edgelord. Then you have Michael Todd Schneider playing Maggot, just being as over the top and silly and ridiculous as humanly possible. And it gets to the point where the guy is just not scary. He's a joke. And he's supposed to be the one that's the craziest one out of them all. And he's the one that I would probably say delivers the worst performance out of all of the actors, because you can tell that he doesn't give a fuck. Some of them are at least trying, but this guy doesn't give a shit. It's like he's just trolling everybody involved with the project and whoever is watching the movie. And then Killjoy plays the fourth killer. I don't even remember anything about that guy. And when it comes to any other performances, the best I can think of is some of the people who played the victims. They delivered some of the most authentic performances, being scared and being uneasy and unnerved. But that's not enough to make this an effective film or a good movie, just because there were some actors that made you kind of believe some of the stuff that was going on, even though it wasn't believable for the majority of the movie, because either people aren't taking it seriously enough or they're taking it too seriously, to the point where you see right through whatever they're trying to do with their so-called authentic, natural performances. And the music, just a bunch of shitty death metal that is in one ear and out the other. The editing, I mean, what kind of editing? This is the kind of film that's intended to look like it's a hack job. So the editing's bad too, because it's supposed to be bad. And I guess one of the best things about it is it's only 77 minutes. So at least it's not 2 hours long. Oh, man. If this is something that sounds like it's worth a watch to you, see it, because I'm not going to be that guy who's going to say don't watch something that you're curious about. But if this doesn't interest you at all, if you don't really have the stomach for this kind of stuff, if this kind of stuff isn't something that is your cup of tea, there's no reason at all for you to sit through this. Because not only is it going to be torture, but it's just going to be a fucking miserable experience for your body, your soul, your mind. And it's going to be one of those things where it's not really going to leave you with anything other than wasted time. This isn't a film that I'm going to think about for years. It's not a movie that sticks in my head despite how much I hate it. Because there's nothing there other than shock value. There's zero substance. And it's done that way on purpose. And that's why it's so fucking pointless. And that's why these films are so fucking pathetic to me. Is because they don't really offer anything that really makes you think about the darker sides of humanity. I mean, I get more of that stuff from Apt Pupil or Maniac or Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. It doesn't really get under your skin because it's never really that effective when it comes to being a real murder tape or as close to reality as you can get. And if you just want gore, just watch a gory movie. Watch a gory movie that has a bunch of gore in it and has characters that are likable, that you actually give a shit, and has a plot. If you just want gore. And with the extreme horror aspects of it, like I said, because it's just crossing off every box in the book, it got tedious, it got predictable, it got old, and yeah, it definitely was something that was awful in terms of its subject matter. There are some shots in this that I don't even know how someone's mind could go to that place. And I don't know why anyone would willingly do so. Even then, because of how they kept upping the ante, there were a lot of times where it felt like there's no way that there are killers that are this fucking evil. Because it's too evil to the point where it's at ludicrous levels of evil. Less would be more. Less would be way more. I think this film has potential, or you can have an extreme kind of horror movie with this shot on video, murder tape style. If you bother to actually create some semblance of a narrative and you have character development. You start out the film with these characters who start out at first rather innocuously, kind of innocent. A group of friends who have different personalities and different quirks. And they seem a little off, but there are things about them that draw you to them. And you start actually liking them, and you enjoy their banter, and you like being around them. And then the film hits you square in the face with the reality that there are a bunch of crazy fucking killers who kill, torture, and rape people for sick kicks. And then at that moment, you're like, whoa, I did not see that coming. And then you continue to see more scenes where they're having fun with one another, and they are continuing this enjoyable dynamic between the two with their banter and their charisma. But you're like, they're fucking killers. These are fucking sick fucks. But that was kind of funny. And then it just really starts playing around with your mind in terms of how charismatic these people are and how you like certain aspects of them, but they're such awful people. And then you have the whole thing with the serial killer where they go to the serial killer house, and then the last half of the film is them being hunted down by one by someone who's worse than they are, who turns out to be the film's hero in the end. And you can still have some of the extreme horror stuff, some of the really twisted shit, but you tone it down enough so that it doesn't seem like it's to the point where you're overcompensating or you're trying to be like a souped up car with like every fucking enhancement known to man. There's potential there. But no, instead you go the lazy route. You just do the same film that you did in August Underground, but with more people and a more annoying giggle twats. And the only thing different is you have more extreme horror and gore. And that's it. So, I don't really have anything else to say about the movie. Um, it took a lot out of me just talking about it, but I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, I'll see you later. See ya.